everybody. Thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight, we're joined by three-time New York Times bestselling author, the host of The Adam Carolla Show. His new book, Everything Reminds Me of Something. It is out now. Of course, he needs no introduction. Adam Carolla. Adam, we're so stoked to have you on the show. I feel, and people must tell you this all the time, Adam, I feel like I know you. I feel like I grew up with you. We've kind of been hearing your voice since around 1995. I won't say what grade I was in, but I was not yet in high school. So I feel like everybody knows you. What were you doing before you kind of came into all of our living rooms? How did you end up kind of where you are today?
I was a carpenter for, the first part of my adult life, out of high school. I didn't go to college. I just kind of walked onto a job site when I was 18, 19, kind of picked up a shovel, started off. I mean, because of your family and the family you're married into, how that works. You show up, you have no skill set, so you become a laborer, and they give you a shovel and you dig footings and, bust out stucco and schlep it over to the dumpster, and just a lot of demo, a lot of digging, a lot of kind of dirty, hot work, $7 an hour. And that was about it. That's all I had.
So where was this?
This was in LA, and I would go from job site to job site, just work some residential stuff, some commercial stuff, just, wherever they needed a back and someone to swing a pickaxe or push a broom or whatever. That's basically what I did. I did that for a little bit, a couple of months, and I was like, this is pretty hot, it's pretty dirty, and it's a little dangerous, and it's not very comfortable, and you don't really get paid. So I've just started frantically thinking of ways to get inside the house, essentially, we're working on. And so I thought, well, if I could learn some carpentry skills, an apprentice, buy some tools and that kind of thing, maybe I could get from, being a laborer to just sort of being an apprentice. And that's what I did. I made it in. I was an apprentice, and I started learning the craft of carpentry. And that's what I did.
And so what were you like telling jokes on like the job sites? How did you end up in comedy? Because it seems like, you seem like a natural. It seems like this is something you've always done.
I had a sense of humor. I was always funny. I was always, but I was there to crack up my buddies at the bar or on the football team or on the construction side. I was just, I was kind of the jokester guy. But, I was like every group, every blue collar group, factory workers and mechanics and stuff. There's the one guy who's the funny guy.
Right.
And he's the funny guy, but no one figures he's going to go do anything with it. You just kind of provide free entertainment for the guys on the job site eating lunch, Yeah. And that's essentially what I did. And at some point, after, a few years of being on the job site, I was like, man, maybe there's more than this. Maybe I could get paid to do comedy somehow. I knew I wasn't white collar material. I wasn't an educated person. I didn't have any college under my belt or any, I couldn't spell very well. I couldn't read very well. I didn't have a very good vocabulary. I was very uneducated, but I thought, man, but you're funny. So maybe, and, I heard of comedians getting paid, and, I had a TV set. I knew there were sitcoms. I knew there was something out there. So I just started kind of pecking away at it. And so during the day, I'd be on a construction site. I'd work 40, 50 hours a week, full time, drove a truck, had an apartment with a few roommates and that kind of, real blue collar stuff, worked my way up to $11 an hour, $12 an hour, something like that. And then at night, I would go off and take improvisational classes with the Groundlings and sketch stuff and do open mic stand-ups, like just whatever I could do at night. And then the next day would roll around and get up at 6 a.m, go back to the job site.
So how did you, what was your break? Because I feel like everybody has kind of that foot in the door moment What was kind of your big break, and where did that ultimately lead you?
I was was working as a carpenter, and I was also working as a boxing coach because it was just a kind of passion of mine. I always enjoyed boxing, and so I did it a little bit. Good workout, good for everything, you know. And so I taught some boxing classes, and then I would go do my carpentry after that, and I was kind of self-employed. And I was driving along my truck, and after teaching my boxing class, and I was going to a home where where I just made myself a entertainment unit for a client. I was going to be installing this entertainment unit, and I was listening to morning radio out here on K-Rock Radio, and I heard them talk about a boxing match, and that they were going to have a morning zoo type boxing match between not the two hosts, but it was going to be between Jimmy the sports guy and Michael the maintenance man. And I thought, I wonder if I could teach one of those guys to box, because if I could teach one of them to box, maybe they'd let me see the inside of the radio studio, or I could just check it out, or, you know, might be kind of fun, or maybe I could catch a break. I like radio. I always wanted to do radio. I didn't know anybody in radio. And the long story short, I showed up to the radio station and waited out by the elevators, and I couldn't get in because the station was locked, and working out wasn't the business hours and stuff like that. Anyway, someone was like going in the back door, and I said, "Hey, I'm a boxing coach. I'm out by the elevators. I'm just going to wait here. If you're going in, could you tell them that there's a boxing coach here that wants to train one of the guys?" And they said, yeah, or they said, yeah, or nothing. I can't remember, but they just walked in, and I just stood by the elevators. It was like 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. And some point, like 20 minutes later, just this guy came walking down the hall, kind of schlubby guy in his mid-20s. And he said, are you the boxing coach? And I said, yeah. He said, all right. I said, yeah. He said, okay. When do you want to start? I said, I don't know, today. And he said, okay. And that guy was Jimmy Kimmel.
No way. Look at that.
Yeah.
And there we go. And obviously, we know The Man Show ultimately came out of that. Loveline, one of my favorites. Crank Yankers, one of my favorites. I mean, you've done some really great stuff. Obviously, Adam, you came out, is this your 7th book now? Everything Reminds Me of Something?
Yeah, it's my 6th book I've done personally, and there was one Drew and I did for Loveline, so I guess my 7th book.
Well, I mean, if you check on Amazon, it's currently sitting at #1 in the categories American Literature Criticism, Self-Help and Psychology Humor, and even more amazing, Automotive Racing. I mean, how honored are you to beat out Road and Track Crews, Big and Fast Cars, 701 Totally Amazing Facts, and a large number of Disney's Cars children's books? Because, I mean, you're kind of killing it on all fronts with this so far.
A lot of range with American literature and cars. I don't even know. I don't know how. There's a chapter about car questions in there, but I am a car guy, so maybe that's where it came from.
Well, what can people expect from this book?
More laughs, you know, and takes and thoughts about stuff maybe they didn't have before they read the book. And, you know, I write funny books, but I write books that sort of have a point, and I can be kind of prescient about things. I can kind of figure out things before they happen. A lot of people enjoyed my first book, which is called In 50 Years We'll All Be Chicks, and I wrote that book about 12 years ago, and I think we got there.
By the way, we're here now.
I thought. I know. So people sometimes, they read my books to kind of figure out where we're going, or where we're heading, or where we're going to be.
Well, maybe you can answer this. What the heck is going on with the sharks? I feel like we've got a big shark situation recently, a lot of shark attacks. What can you give us any insight? Is this part of the book? What can we take from the sharks?
There's no shark chapter, but you have to kind of be careful about what is actually happening and what the news is making happening because they
You
saw it
don't
on
say.
another news station. Yeah, I don't say. So there's like trends that are actual trends, and then there's trends because the news are turning them into a trend, and there but now the trend has to live somewhere in reality. Like there must be a couple of shots of sharks in the sound, or somebody needs to be bitten, and then the news they'll be off and running with it
Yeah,
after that.
I love
And
it.
and so what it'll turn into is they'll do it's that's what the news does. So what the news does is after 9/11 there is some liquor store that's owned by a Muslim and some guy drives his pickup truck through it. But that doesn't mean it's everywhere ubiquitous and Muslim citizens are being bashed. That's what the
Right.
news does. The news
Exactly.
takes this incident and that incident and then turns it into a trend. Like Asian Americans are being assaulted because of the Wuhan flu. We need to call it COVID. And it's like, how many? Who's doing the assaulting? Where is it happening? How do you connect it to the virus or the outbreak? But that's what they do. So be careful, because I think they're kind of doing that with sharks.
They're doing it with the sharks now. I mean, it's really everywhere. I feel like, I mean, whether, we're talking about how the media sensationalizes everything, but they blow everything out of proportion, as you're saying. And I feel like comedy is an interesting area because it used to be that you could kind of joke around about different groups, whether, whatever it might be in America. Now it seems like it's hard to be a comedian because things that were funny, Adam, like 10 years ago, people get really upset about. You get canceled. I mean, they've tried to do it to Dave Chappelle, and he's having none of it, obviously. But what happened? When did we get to that moment where you couldn't really tell jokes and comedy stopped being funny because everything had to be so PC? It's just so sad.
Yeah, well, there's a very small group of people that are sort of in charge of trends and fashion and the zeitgeist. It's kind of like Hollywood is a very small group of people who think in ass backwards kinds of ways, but they're sort of setting trends. And so this is no different. It's just a very small minority of people who are very loud and have the ear of certain people who have a podium and a platform like New York Times, LA Times, or what have you, CNN, Twitter, and then they just people that do not speak for the majority of Americans make the most noise. And
Yeah.
then we think there's a movement going. Like we think now I can't go in the ocean because I'm going to get bit
Because
by
there's
a shark.
sharks. Exactly.
There's sharks everywhere. And that's the same with the sharks. It's the same with the people that are offended. Most Americans aren't offended. They like jokes. They like comedians. There's truth tellers. They want to talk about issues and they want to make fun of issues. And there's a very small group of people that have convinced us that if you go into the ocean, you'll get bit by a shark. And if you speak your mind about the transgender community, you'll lose your job. And they've scared a sufficient number of people.
Yeah. And by the way, I give a lot of credit to people who don't allow themselves to be canceled because, I mean, to a degree, you could kind of make a choice. You can either, a lot of people come out and they apologize and they say, oh, I was so wrong. There are some, I happen to have one in my family who just kind of double down on it. And they're like, you know what? If you don't like this, I'm sorry. This is how I feel. This is either the truth or whatever it is. I give those people a lot of credit because I feel like it's really hard today to do that. They're few and far between, but I think Dave Chappelle certainly has been one of late. I want to ask you though, I see you all the time out there on, I work for Fox News, but I see you a lot on Fox. That's a slippery slope to walk though. If you're part of kind of Hollywood, if you're part of that scene, to come out and share your views on things that are very common sense. Did you have second thoughts about doing that?
No, my policy has always been if you ask me to go on your show, I go on your show. And people say, well, whose show is that? And do you agree or endorse with X, Y, or Z? And I go, no, that's not why I'm on the show. I'm there on the show to talk about what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And as long as they don't tell me what to talk about, then I'll go on their show. And that's always been my policy, and I've always done that. And then in the last 10 minutes, we've decided you have to pick a side. But I've never been that way. I've been, I was on O'Reilly years ago because O'Reilly asked me to come on his show.
Yeah.
Before that, I would be on Politically Incorrect every other week because they asked me to go on the show. I'm completely consistent. I've been on The View. I've been on Huffington Post. I've been on O'Reilly. I've been on Newsmax. I've been on Tucker. I will go where the show is. And just recently, what happened is it used to be fine to go on Letterman and then to go on O'Reilly. Nobody cared. Now, if you go on O'Reilly or whatever the equivalent of O'Reilly is, you're no longer welcome on Letterman and CNN or The View. So they segregated themselves. That was their decision. They did it. I go on Tucker. I go on Gutfeld. I go on shows on Fox oftentimes because I'm no longer welcome on those other shows. But that's not because I'm not going on those shows. That's because they're closed-minded hypocrites.
Well, the funny thing is I got asked, in the past 5 years, one time to go on CNN. That was the last time, Adam, they ever asked me on there. Perhaps I made too much sense for them, but I digress. How do you see yourself, though? Do you see yourself as a conservative or a common sense Democrat, something else entirely? Where do you fall, or do you just not even label yourself?
I see myself as a common sense citizen who has been made into a conservative, but I don't change my opinions. I've been pretty consistent. I have many libertarian sort of notions and leanings. I have other thoughts that involve, hard work and discipline and families and religion. And first off, I'm not religious, but I do believe there's a strong place for that in our society. And I'm not really anything other than consistent. And I've always been consistent. And you can go back, I've been on the radio. I was on the radio, 27 years ago. You can hear the stuff I said 27 years ago. It's the same stuff I say today. So I feel like I'm going to keep saying whatever it is I want to say. And if some change is afoot, then maybe there'll be some nuanced change. I'm not saying I have to think the same about every subject until I go into the grave. But in general, I'm, legalize pot, legalize gay marriage, and have a stout border, and stop raising taxes. It's just like pretty basic crap. Raise your kids, feed your kids. Not my job to feed your kids. It's your job to feed your kids. Don't have kids if you can't afford them. I like school choice. Basic stuff. I don't see the benefit in wearing a mask outdoors during COVID. I don't see the benefit in closing beaches. I don't see the benefit in closing schools. So I have kids. They're in school. And they say, we're closing the schools for a year and a half. And I say, I disagree with that. And that makes me a Republican. But it really just makes me a dad who has a couple of brain cells to rub together.
And I feel like a lot of people fall into this category that, you're talking about, where it really is common sense, basic stuff. And I think that's the interesting thing about where we are right now in the grand scheme of things, is that things that were just, it seems so obvious not too long ago, are apparently very radically right at this point, which I don't know how we got there. But, it's, who knows where this all goes. I feel like the pendulum has to swing back at some point. Things are typically cyclical. We'll see ultimately what happens. But Adam, what do you think is the best part of America, and what do you think is the greatest threat to the future of our country?
I think the best part of America is, Dave Chappelle getting canceled at one venue and going across the street to another venue,
So
and the
good.
people that show up and support him and, not backing down, or the guy who pulled out his Glock and killed the mass shooter in Indiana the other day, young guy, responsible, trained, there's many people in the military, many people at the border, are just people, just the dad who builds a treehouse with their kid on a Saturday. That's kind of this country, that guy who has his kid and gets the family truckster and heads down to Home Depot and buys a bunch of plywood and treated lumber. I say treated because it's an exterior application, obviously.
Oh, see, look
And,
at you with the carpentry. I love
yeah.
it.
Well,
Great.
you could use cedar or redwood, but it's going to cost you a little more. But
Especially now.
that guy who spends the weekend, building the treehouse with the kid, and then the mom who comes out because she made sandwiches, and gives the guy beer at the end of the day and a hug. That world. That's the good part.
Totally. What do you think is the greatest threat to our country?
The greatest threat are the real progressive sort of nihilists who claim to love this country but just want to tear down everything that existed before them. They're constantly talking about how much they love this country, but we're not living up to our potential, but they have to tear down everything. And there are also people that are essentially claiming to be nutritionists, but arguing against diet and exercise. I'm trying to, I just go, look, hard work, focus, education, family. Believe me, that's the key here. And they're like, oh no, I'm a nutritionist, but I want to give you these fudge sticks made with saccharin. It's like, that's not going to get anyone thinner or healthier.
Totally.
It's just diet and exercise. So the worst are the people that are out pushing COVID versus pushing exercise and sunshine and vitamin D and moving outdoors and sweating, or the ones that are pushing pharmaceutical drugs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors versus get out and listen to some classical music and go for a damn hike. You know what I mean? So that these weird idiot authoritarian experts, I say with air quotes, that seem to know how to run your life and what's going to work and how it's going to work, and duplicitous politicians that are taking money from schools and voting against school choice and all mobbed up with the unions. Those are the ones who pose the real danger. That's the worst this country has to offer. I live in California. Gavin Newsom is the worst we have to offer. If he has his way, we are screwed. If Kamala Harris has her way, we're screwed.
Oh, well,
If
let's hope neither of
Ilhan
them.
Omar has her way, we're screwed. If AOC has her way, we're done as a country.
Well, that's the truth. None of those individuals should ever be president of the United States. We'll say that. All right, final question. And it's a new question, and I think I'm going to start adding it to my show, starting with you, Adam. Would you ever run for office? Why or why not?
All right, but you need to label it the Adam Carolla question.
This will be the Adam Carolla question, yes, going forward.
I'm going to be watching.
Okay.
I never say never about anything. It seems insane in this day and age to even think about that, but I never say never. I have a lot to do. I have a lot that keeps me busy. I feel like I have more projects and ideas than I have time or hands, but I would never say never.
You're a smart guy, Adam. I think you make a lot of sense when I see the things you say, and I'm watching too. I got to tell you, you make a lot of sense to a lot of people. So I'm going to say just keep it in the back of your mind. Having experienced firsthand via my family what happens to you though when you run for office, they don't make it easy. That I'll tell you, especially if you're not on the correct team as far as they are concerned. The folks, the elites, the ones in charge apparently. But I'm gonna put myself in your corner if it ever gets there. But listen, I want to tell everybody, go buy your book. Number 6 for you, number 7 total. Congratulations on that. Good luck with it. I hope it continues at the top of Amazon on all of the different categories. So great. And Adam Carolla, thank you for joining us on The Right View. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it.
All right. To everybody at home, as always, thank you so much. We'll see you back here next time for more.